Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District by Horizon Capital, where we partner with B2B SaaS companies and help them scale with both capital and our growth marketing playbook. This episode is also sponsored by our partners at Byldd, a startup development studio that helps early-stage startups build and launch scalable revenue-generating software businesses. Product development is often a challenge for non-technical founders who don't have a tech person internally. That's where Byldd comes in. They help founders build and launch their MVPs, test the market, and find product market fit. For $15K and roughly a month's work, Byldd will get your validated product up and out. We've all been burnt by the companies that promised this for years, but Byldd is focused on finding product market fit and will do that by keeping you away from the feature creep and escalating costs that do most initial products. They keep costs low with the block structure, but more importantly, they have already built great products on scope and on time for founders. Companies they've worked with have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue, gotten into Y Combinator, or raised money at 8-figure valuations. If you have an idea and want to see it come to life as a product, head over to Byldd.com. That's BYLDD.com today. In today's episode, we'll be talking about product development to turn your next idea into your next app scale-up. Today, we have our guest, Andreas Creten, joining us. Andreas is a software engineer and entrepreneur who loves developing apps and building teams. He's the CEO of Madewithlove, which is an app development company that helps startups and established companies turn ideas into applications by offering development, consulting, and interim management services, building both products and teams. They've been CTO in over 60 companies, mainly operating as CTO at interim. And you can regularly find Andreas if you're looking for him working on open source projects and speaking at conferences around the world. So welcome, Andreas. Super excited to have you on the show today.
Cool. Thanks. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Good intro. Yeah.
I appreciate that. So let's kind of start the conversation off. Talking about legacy code. I know with Michael Feathers, he has a quote: "Legacy code is a code without test." So for people listening in, just trying to understand it, can you speak a bit more about that? What makes it so hard to work with when we're talking about legacy code? And do you agree with that quote?
Sure. Dealing with legacy code, of course, what's the definition of legacy? Legacy can also be a good thing. So we typically talk about technical debt. So legacy code can be technical debt, and technical debt is indeed something that you shouldn't have, because it's the debt, right? In the one point in time to pay back your debt. And also when you have debt with someone, you have to pay interest on that. And so basically that's why we prefer to compare it with that more. And we say that there is something like controlled technical debt. And that's basically indeed when you have technical debt that you know it's there, and you basically embrace it and you think it's fine, you're happy to pay that interest. And there's tests around it indeed. Once you have tests around it, basically you know the ins and outs. You don't necessarily know how the code behaves, but if you put this input, you get this output, and that's the most important thing. So it's covered with tests, and then you're good. So in my opinion, it's still legacy code at that time, but it's controlled, and that's totally fine. So I think legacy codes can also be coded with tests, but of course, if there is tests around legacy code, it makes it a lot easier to maintain it and to cope with it.
Okay, and then I guess kind of switching gears, we'll kind of chat about about technical due diligence. I want to understand your guys' process, because I see you guys work with several VCs. Us at Horizon Capital, we also do our own technical due diligence when we do acquisitions. I guess similar process with VCs who are looking to make investments on their product. Can you just share, people listening, what does a typical DD process look like, and what are some maybe top red flags that you guys come across when you're running DD for a lot of products out there or investments, and usually kill the deal maybe?
Of course. Maybe a little bit of background story on how we started doing them. So we company exists for 14 years this year, and we've been working as CTOs and software engineers in a lot of different companies, mainly in the startup and the scale scene indeed. And investors started noticing us. And at one point in time, in 2017, one of the bigger investors in Belgium, they also like, "Hey, it looks like you guys know what you're doing on the technical side of things. Can you please do the diligence for us?" And so that's how we got started doing it. And we had no clue how to do it. So we just winged it, more or less. And they were very happy with our approach. I guess what we do is we We're of course technical. It's a technical due diligence, but we take it a little broader than most other companies. So we look into 5 different pillars. One being the team and the leadership. Another one being the processes. Then the communication, mainly the written communication, like documentation, stuff like that. Then obviously the engineering team or engineering. And the last thing we look at is a problem solution. So it's kind of product team. So we look at a way broader perspective than just like looking into the code base or asking a couple of questions to engineers. We are interview based, so that's also very important. So we don't send the checklist up front, which is something that a lot of auditors do. We really start with interviewing. We try to understand like how the company operates. And the question that we're trying to solve is basically, is this company ready for growth? On a technical perspective, but also on a team perspective and on processes perspective. So typically we do like 8 interviews in the due diligence. We spend about 2 days in the code base, diving in and checking how things are architectured. But we're not like a company that will say like this line of code it's not good or whatsoever. We really try to get a broader sense of it. And also makes that we can basically have a very quick turnaround. We can do them typically in 1 week from start to finish. And that's what investors also really like. And from the perspective of the target companies that we audit, they also find it a very pleasant experience because they don't have to go to useless checklists and things that they have to deliver. It's really from engineer to engineer. And maybe also one very important thing to know is that the people that do the audits on our side are the people that still work day to day with the customers. So we're not a pure auditing company. We still are CTOs in the field. And we basically rotate our teams that do the audits and also work on actual products. So we also know what's going on in the market. Well, we see that a lot of other auditors, they're like, it's like one-man show doing audits or due diligence. And then, you lose a bit of disconnection with what's going on in the world. And the common red flags that we encounter, it depends on the stage of the company. In a very early stage, it's lack of documentation, lack of processes, which most of the time are something that you can correct. But in some cases, it will basically slow down growth a lot. And if the founders don't realize that's a problem, they will not be able to grow the team as fast as they plan to do in the business plan that they present to the investor. In the bigger scale-ups, definitely technical debt is something that we encounter, obviously, and it's uncontrolled technical debt. So basically what happens most of the time is they start with a small team, hacker-type CTO that just builds the thing, that has all the knowledge. Then they start adding people to the team. What we often see, for example, is that the CTO leaves, and then the team is left with the code base that they didn't write themselves. They build on top of that. And at one point in time, they kind of lose the oversight of the whole situation. And that's typically where we come in to kind of clean things up, make a clean sheet, and then prepare the ground for a new CTO to join the team to basically continue the work that we started.
Okay, so maybe let's go further on to that last point. So if I'm a VC, I invested in a company, further down the stage, and you find all this, technical debt, but they still decide to move forward and say, okay, we're going to invest in you, and then you come in working with them to help kind of mitigate that risk or work on that technical debt. How do you guys work with them? I mean, if they probably have a CTO already in place, they already have a team, you're working with them. And what does that kind of engagement look like? And how long does it last? And then, eventually that they're on their own, they're able to manage it properly.
Yeah. So let me start with like how long it typically takes us. I think it's not realistic to make change in less than 6 months. Sometimes we manage to do it in 6 months, but typically we end up being there like a year, maybe 18 months. And from day one, we discuss what we call the exit plan. So we want to know what our exit plan is. Because we don't want to work with a company for longer than 2 years, because we work with a lot of VCs. They don't want to give a lot of money to external consultants. The startups need to be able to run on their own. So we really come in like a bit like the A team, cleaning things up, and then we're out again. So that's our approach. How we do it, like working with the teams, I think trust is the most important thing about what we do. So we always combine what we call technical consulting. So this is like a CTO, an interim, or if there was already a CTO, we typically give the person another title. Sometimes it's a VP engineering, sometimes it's engineering manager. We don't really care about it. But basically, we come in to assist the CTO in that situation. and to push them forward further and to coach them. But we also do the same on the engineering level. So we bring in our own software engineers. So that's why we have a team consisting of CTOs and software engineers. We believe in the combination of both because we want to have the boots on the ground and we really want to show how it's done also to the engineering team. So we're not like a consultant, and I always compare it with a seagull. I don't know if you know that person, but a seagull, they fly in, they sit on a pole, they make a lot of noise, they shit the pole full of shit, obviously, and then they fly away, and the only thing that's left is a pile of shit. And that's how I compare typical consultants that come in and they just say a lot of things, and then it's up to the team to implement it, and they have no clue how to get started on it. So that's why we believe in that combination. And the first thing that we will do is to basically talk with people. If we haven't done the due diligence before, we will talk with the people. We'll try to understand their ambitions, their struggles, and we will work from that. So we're no project is the same. So we will always adapt our approach to the team that we have available, to the challenges that they're facing, and we try to find the best way together. And that's really the most important thing. And all our engineers that we have in our team are very communicative and good mentors. And we really take the hands of the engineering team of our customers and we push them to the next level.
Nice. And then, when you're working with them, how do you kind of balance, right? I think balance is the big act, right? So you can spend a lot of time, as the CTO thinking, okay, should I work on my technical debt and kind of manage that? Or do I work on product development as a product manager or CTO? What's your take on that, and how do you effectively think about balancing that act?
I mean, if you ask a developer, they will always want to refactor things and spend time in code, right?
For sure.
We are really pragmatic in that. Obviously, there needs to be a good balance, and it depends a bit on the situation. First of all, the first thing that we say is we don't refactor just for the sake of refactoring. If you want to refactor something, you do it because you're touching that part of the code base and you're making it better. It's like the Boy Scout principle. I don't know if you've heard about it, but basically in the Boy Scouts, when you go camping, you go to the campsite, you leave the place in a cleaner state than you found it. And that's what we do in code as well. But it makes absolutely no sense to do like a big rewrite because that's what we see a lot. A lot of companies do that. It's like, the old technology, it's not very good anymore. Let's start over from scratch. And then they end up with a 3 to 5 year project that's never finished. And so we really believe in that evolutionary approach rather than the revolution. And that's what we try to install. In some cases, we actually put a percentage on the amount of product work versus legacy work that we do. And it's something that I really use to our CEOs, for example, to explain to them that there is a need for cleaning up the legacy, but that we also still want to push forward on product development. And in some cases, like in one company that I worked with, we had for 6 months, we had a real product standstill. We didn't develop any new features. Of course, from a product manager perspective, that's the worst thing to ever happen to your company, right? So we try to find some nifty things that we could do so that for the customers, it still felt like things are moving forward, but the engineering team had the time to basically clean things up. And what we did there is for example, we went through a redesign because it's just front-end work. It's other people working on it most of the time than the real legacy stuff. So we went through a redesign. We improved the usability of the application. We did some kind of low-hanging fruit stuff. And by doing these kind of things, the application was still moving on with a very low effort from the engineering team. And we had the time to then clean things up. And at the moment, we had a stable foundation. After that 6 months, product development really, really sped up. And that's 5 years ago, and they still have the pace of being able to really quickly develop new functionality because they took the time to slow down for a while. And that's something that's very hard to explain to a CEO and a chief product officer sometimes, but yeah, it's paying off that depth. If you really compare it with that, they'll understand. And so I always try to make ratios, and there's a ratio between product work, bugs, and legacy. Because also bugs, that's something that's sometimes underrated. Some engineering teams spend a lot of time solving bugs, but if you put a percentage on it, every week you spend 10% of our time on solving bugs. We could spend maybe 100%, but then you don't have any feature work. So putting it really down in numbers and measuring it really helps.
And you mentioned something about the refactoring part of it, and you mentioned a lot of times maybe a CEO or a company comes and say like, let's just do that instead. Let's spend a lot of time and money to just refactoring it rather than fix the code. I'm assuming most of the time, that's probably not the best solution of what that's probably not something, they come to you and say, this is what we want, but you say it's probably not what you need. I'm sure that's kind of how the conversation goes. What are some reasons when you say, okay, yes, this is what you need and you agree with it, and we actually do need to refactor this? Is there like what scenarios?
Yeah, of course. Most of the time it's like they're using very old data technology. And then I'm talking...
Like what? What kind of technology are we talking about?
I'm currently talking with a customer, they're on COBOL. It's like a very old programming language. And they interact with a mainframe system. That's old stuff, right? And there, yes, it might make sense to switch to something else. But still, the COBOL is outputs HTML, and they're making web applications with COBOL. So also there, I don't think they need to go for an approach where they replace everything at once. I think they can... And we did that in our company as well. If you put a proxy in front of it, you can start basically rebuilding parts of the application. You route some parts of the application to the old system, some parts to the new system. But for the end user, there is no difference in experience. So typically it's when there is like a programming language that's not really used anymore, or that doesn't have a good community anymore, or when there has been like a very, very drastic change, for example, in database structure or basically in what the company is doing. We see, of course, in an early stage company, you go through a lot of different phases of your product. And sometimes the product that you started building in the first day is something light years different than what you're doing after 3 years. And sometimes basically the structure is not compatible anymore. And then it might be a good time to say, okay, let's start from scratch. Or, of course, if you're going to do something totally different and you decide to do that, it's also better to start from scratch than to build on top of something that you already have, if there is not a lot of connection between the two products.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. And when it comes to tools, is there any, there's obviously so many tools in the space of what, how can help you manage the different aspects of technical debt. Is there any maybe favorite tools or specific ones that Madewithlove you guys use to ensure kind of code quality and
yeah, maybe it's more about the kind of tools that we use.
Sure.
I think so. First of all, the first thing that we will do when we get into a company is if they don't have it, is installing a good continuous integration and continuous deployment pipeline. That's the first thing that we do to ensure that basically a thing can run smoothly. Because in a lot of the companies that we encounter, they don't even have that, or they have parts of it. The second thing is having a good local development environment that's really close to the production environments. For me, it does not need to be 100% the same. I don't think you need to be running Kubernetes clusters on your local machine. I think you can do fine with it with a simple Docker setup that's more or less the same. But yeah, it uses the same versions and stuff like that. And then the next thing that we'll do is, of course, installing tests. There we use, for example, if the code base is too messy to have unit tests or functional tests in the code base, we will use something like Cypress to do like end-to-end tests in the front end to test some of the critical paths. And then we will use like a code linter. Typically, we configure it in such a way that the linting only works on the file that we touch, because we see a lot of people that say, yeah, we cannot use a linter on our code base because it's all spaghetti code. But you can configure most of the linters in such a way that they only lint the code that you changed. So with every pull request, it only lints the code that you changed. And then step by step, you get into better shape. And it's the same that we do with the static code analyzer. Also there, we will have that, and we'll only run it on the cleaned up parts of the code base. And yeah, the more we clean up, obviously, the more will be covered by static analysis and by a linter. And basically, I think those things and having then a good pull request setup going on, or whatever merge request that you're using, where basically all those checks need to pass. There's also a manual approval necessary by someone else in the team. All those things combined make basically that as a developer you have the good. You can trust the process, so that if you're rewriting stuff and all the tests are green, that it should work. That's basically where we start with.
Okay. Yep. Okay, makes sense. And if switching, I'll talk about the more important part of around the team. Less about the code itself. As a CTO, if you guys are coming in as interim CTO and looking to refine or optimize the team, what are some maybe steps, or what are some things you guys consider and how you map out and build the let's say perfect or ideal engineering team? And do you guys also help in replacing yourself in terms of the CTO and finding that right person?
So we have 2 recruiters in our team.
Cool.
So we really, I always say we take all the pain away from the CTO, so we also help with recruiting. I think that's a very important part of our job, actually. Replacing ourselves, that we want to replace ourselves with people that are to the same level as we are. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of startups, especially in Europe, that have like very junior engineers. And I don't really like to talk in junior, senior, whatever. Let's say inexperienced engineers that are either fresh from school or went through a boot camp and then joined the company. And they believe that basically with a lot of boots on the ground, you can get a lot of work done. But sometimes it's better to have like a couple of senior people in your team. And they'll get like 1 senior developer gets the work done of like 2 junior developers. And from a financial perspective, it might be more or less equal. But to manage things, it's a lot easier because you have way less people to manage. And of course, they're more senior, so they take more responsibility. So in a lot of the cases that we end up with, we try to bring up the seniority or the experience in the engineering team, and we do that in 2 different ways. It's by adding new people, but also by mentoring the people that are already there to bring them to the next step. So we try to both approaches. And we do the same for CTO, by the way. It's not necessarily that we bring a CTO externally. If there is already a CTO that needs to be coached, we will coach a person and we will try to bring them to the right level. If, for example, the CTO left and we need to replace them temporarily, and if there is and we believe there is someone in the team that could be ready for the job, we will start coaching that person and we'll bring them along into certain meetings and into the process that we are installing, so that at one point in time they're ready to take over if they're ready for it. So that's the best way to do it, for the CTO to have it come from internal, unless there is like a drastic cultural change that needs to happen, and then it might make more sense to bring someone externally and also bring in some like more and external engineers to get things going.
Got it. So, I guess it sounds like the focus should be more on getting people more on the senior side, or at least, leveling up the...
Especially in early stage. Yeah. Especially in early stage. I see a lot of early stage companies, because of monetary reasons, use junior or less experienced people. You don't get as far as quickly as you want with that level of engineering than if you're bringing more senior people. Yeah. Got
it. So that's not somewhere you want to cheap out on, right? If you can pay for the senior and more experience, it's going to make your life, everybody's life easier. Yeah, I always agree with that. Okay, last question around, about your guys' process and how you work. If I'm a SaaS founder, let's say whether I'm early stage, I want to develop my application, and we come to you, Madewithlove. Look, we don't have the team in place, but walk us through how does your services work with me? Where do I start, and what stage would my product be finished if I come to you and say I've got this roadmap or this product I want built?
Yeah, that's a good question. So most of the founders that come to us are non-technical founders. They already went through an exit before, so they know what it is to build a technical team, and they know how hard it is. So basically, they trust us to basically take that risk away of building their own team. Because as a non-technical founder, you cannot judge like what your technical team is doing. We see a lot of companies, and they end up on our plate in the end, where basically non-technical founders trusted some kind of developer, CTO, or whatever agency, and they trust them for like maybe 6-9 months. They're working on something, and then they figure out like this is totally unstable. We paid for utter crap, right? That's sadly enough a situation that we clean up a lot. But let's say you're indeed like a founder, you have an idea, you come to us, and actually we call it greenfield work. It's like getting something new started. It's only like 20% of the work that we do, so we don't do them too much. But basically, first of all, we will talk about product management. So we don't do product management ourselves. So if the people have a good idea on how to build a product, and they really know how to write the specifications and know how to work with a good designer, or they have already a good designer, then basically we can talk and we can start working. If they don't have that, We have a sister company, it's called Smooth Sailing, and they can take care of all of that. So first, they go through the product management, user research, first wireframes, stuff like that. And then once that's done, we want to be involved in the process because we believe also from a technical perspective, we can shape a product and we can make the product better if you consider technology already in the early stage. The next thing that we will do, obviously, is start building stuff. And there we want to be as pragmatic as possible as well. So, for example, we are never going to build an invoicing system. We're using Stripe for that or any other products that fits. And also, we're not going to implement it on day one because that's what a lot of companies do. Mm-hmm. You only need it when you have customers, right? And not when you have like 2 customers, because 2 customers, you can easily build them manually. You need it when you have like maybe 20 customers, because I'm starting to become a pain. So we build a version of your products iteratively. So basically, Scrum, whatever we decide together, how you want it to work. We build also documentation. I think that's also very important. So there is documentation for internal people to take it over for us. And then typically when we are pretty far in the development process and things are ready to launch, we will urge the customer to hire people on their own payroll. So basically we will tell them, hire your own engineers. We can help you with finding them if it's necessary, but basically bring your own engineers in your team. And we want to hand over the product at the moment, more or less when it goes live. So that kind of the operational side of things is handled by the internal team. Because obviously if you want your company to be successful, they don't want to have like all the intellectual property, not with the knowledge on the side of an external contractor. You want to have it within your company. And that's also typically when they raise another round of funding. And when you want to raise another round of funding, it's best to have as much knowledge internally as possible. So, and then also there, like the time frame of a process like that is between 9 months and 18 months, more or less. So I always say you cannot get the product done in under 9 months, like really finished and polished.
So you're talking iteratively. Maybe they come up with an MVP or kind of the initial product, or just single feature out to roll out. So that's 9 months you're talking, or we got a couple.
Obviously maybe the core of the product typically maybe you have it in 3 months, but you need to have all the surrounding and. So to really get a finished product, not like the MVP, but a finished product is 9 months. And how we do that is basically we assign to you a CTO and an engineering team, typically 2 or 3 people, very small teams, that's what we believe in as well. And they basically are responsible for the whole trajectory of the and when you start onboarding your own developers, basically we phase out our developers accordingly.
And you guys also help with, you said, product managers as well?
So we have a sister company that takes care of the product management side of things.
Cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And just a quick question around location. You guys are based in Europe, Eastern Europe, or?
No, I'm based in Belgium, but our company is remote. So we have people throughout Europe. We used to have some people in Latin America as well. We've been in Africa. But we try to keep our time zones basically from New York time to kind of Moscow time zone. But that's where we are.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, just for people listening in to understand, where to find you.
Sure.
Cool. Andreas, want to shift gears here, kind of move to the second part of the interview, a little bit more fun, less technical, but we'll know a little bit more about your
questions.
I know that's the fun part for you, but now we got into the emotional side and understand your story. Okay. So, but before we get there, tell us, where are you guys in terms of size today? And I'm assuming you guys have you guys raised any capital or completely bootstrapped? How long have you guys been around?
I bootstrapped the company. So it's for 14 years now. And in 2017, I sold a part to some kind of an investment fund with private equity. But I actually last year we bought it back with the management team. So now we're totally independent again. Nice. And so we were 20 people, and we want to keep it small. So it's a real struggle for us to keep the size down. So we want to be between 20 and 30 people, not more than that. Because I want to be able to deal with customers still every day. I do, for example, all of the diligence myself. I also write code for customers myself still every day because I really believe that as a founder of a company like this, you need to be able to still go with the guys in the field and get things done. So we really want to keep it small. We make good revenue, we make good profit. We hire people that we think that will be of value to our team. We always have positions open, but we're not hiring because we just need to hire someone. So customers have to wait. We want to hire the right people. And that's really our main focus, is like finding those people, bringing them in our team, and then we can scale up accordingly.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Yes.
What's one activity that you enjoy outside of work that gets you into flow state?
I do like carpenting.
Okay.
So
nice.
but I like the rough side of things. So I like building cabins and stuff like that.
Okay.
So during the pandemic, I built a cabin in my backyard because I was fed up with working between the kids and, the kids disturbing you all the time.
Yeah.
So I love doing that.
Nice. Did you build your office where you're working right now with your hands?
I mean, this is actually funny. The office where I'm standing here today, the beer Stella Artois, the beer? Like it's
which
like
one?
Stella Artois.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Sure.
So this building where I'm standing now, is where it's the first time that they brewed it. It was in this building. So it's a brewery.
Okay.
So it's just a little anecdote. So no, this is like a very old building. I mean, it's of course redone from the inside. But no, I'm working from the cabin 2 days a week.
Okay.
Yeah, and it works pretty well.
That's awesome. Cool. What's one piece of advice you wish you had known, and if you can go back, you would tell your 25-year-old self?
It's funny because I'm writing a chapter in a book that's about. It's called Letters to Young Entrepreneurs. So that's exactly what it's about. And I've been thinking about what I would write, and it's a couple of different things, but maybe coming back to the whole bootstrap and growth kind of thing. When you are an entrepreneur and you tell people you're an entrepreneur, the first thing they'll ask you is like, how many people are you? Because that's an indication of the size of your company, right?
Sure.
I think it should be more accepted to try to keep a company small and to basically enjoy yourself all the time, rather than to have to chase external investment to be able to grow your company to whatever size, which is also a path that you can take. But I really believe there is also a place for the path where basically you can be yourself every day, day in, day out, have a really nice life, and then enjoy yourself building a company rather than to chasing yourself all the time. And that's really the kind of approach that I've taken, and that really works for me. So that's also a path that you can take, and I guess that's something that I would want to tell my 25-year-old self or anyone else starting a company today.
Completely agree with that. I mean, build for what suits for you, what you want, not for chasing external social cues or social pressures or norms. Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges you guys are facing in order to continue to grow Madewithlove? Meaning what keeps you up at night? And other than trying to keep the team lean and grow kind of sustainably, what are the things your challenges you're facing?
I'm not kept up at night. That's
very easy.
No. It's really to the frustration of my wife, but
you sleep like a baby.
I sleep very well. What's the? We have to make choices, a lot of choices. For example, the audits that we're doing at the technical due diligence, we decide to limit ourselves to one case per week. And there, for example, there is a demand to do way more, so we can double it, triple it, maybe. But we basically took the decision to keep it small and to say no to investors, which is a risk as well because they might run to another company. In those cases, so these kind of decisions were to keep it small. You're making a lot of compromises, and you need to be making the right ones for the future of the company. I think that's the most difficult thing that we are facing.
Yeah, it sounds easy, right? But I mean, every micro decision, right, those add up and ends up being something down the line, just like code, right? Yeah. What are the best 3 resources? These can be books, people, mentors, or people you follow in the space who you'd say have been the most instrumental to your success over these last few years and would suggest other people listening in to check out? So
the last part, listening in to check out will be hard, but my team is definitely the best resource. We are a remote team. And we are not built around like a play hard, work hard culture, because if you're remote and you see each other only once a year, it's not possible. But we're based around knowledge. We share a lot of information, and we really that's really what we live on: information and challenging each other. And so they are for sure my biggest resource and knowledge. And I'm actually writing a book together with one of our CTOs in residence about like how you manage a team like that and how you manage that knowledge as well. Then, I mean, Jason Fried from Basecamp, I think they renamed it again to 37 Signals by now. I mean, they have the first book that I really fell in love with was the
Lean Startup.
Was Getting Real. No?
Oh, Getting Real. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a very stupid, very old book, and when you read it again now, it's like totally outdated. Yeah, I think it's from 2000, maybe 4 or maybe 6. I don't know. Very old, but it's totally outdated, but still for me it was a very big inspiration to me. That very tiny book. I think all their other books are less interesting than that first one. And then the last one, and this one we give to a lot of customers, is the Phoenix Project. I don't know have you read the Phoenix Project?
I have not. Who's that by? The Phoenix Project.
I don't know the author of it. I think it's a group of authors, but basically it's a fictional book about basically a software team where things go wrong. And if you give it to a software team and they start reading, someone in the team starts reading the book, everyone can recognize themselves in one of the personas in the book. And it's really nice. There is like this guy called Brent. He's like a bottleneck for everything. It's like he stops the boys and stuff like that. And so there's also this kind of the guy that rides the Porsche, I think he's riding, that comes into the factory, into the company maybe once a month and says like 3 things and everyone's like, wow, what he's saying is awesome. And then he leaves again and they're like, what do we have to do now, right? So these kind of people are in there and it's very nice to relate to that. And it's a nice book to read. Yeah. So we give it to all our customers.
Okay, so if you were giving it to our customers, then I definitely have to recommend that and read it myself. Cool.
Sure.
We'll add that to the show notes for people to check out as well if you guys want to read it. Andreas, what does success mean to you today? I mean, either personally, business, financial, life. There's no right answer.
For me, it's I'm happy with the life I have today, and I think it's important that I can spend a lot of time with my family. I have 3 kids. One is almost 2, and the others are 4 and 6, so they're very small. And I think it's very important to be able to spend a lot of time with them. I'm taking the time, for example, today I went to take them from school, and then I went home with them and I cooked dinner for them. And then I came back to the office to record this podcast. And I think that's really also the flexibility that we have today, I guess. Either, by being a founder of a company, but also our team has that flexibility because we are remote, we're organized like that, and basically can work from everywhere, from whenever you want. And I think that's, of course, financial independence is also an important thing, but having that freedom to basically work whenever you want and whenever you like, I guess that's for me the most important thing.
Love it. Yep, I completely agree. Andreas, this has been great. I enjoyed chatting with you, learning more about you, your background, Made with Love. If you guys want to check it out, madewithlove.com. Founders listening in want to get in touch with you. Where's the best place to contact you directly?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn or fill out the contact form on the website. We also have a good blog that talks about most of the things that we discussed during the talk here. So it's about legacy, it's about dealing with teams, stuff like that. So you can find a lot of resources there as well on what we do.
Okay, awesome. And I see on your guys' website, you guys are hiring quite a bit for different engineering teams, and so people can check that as well. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Andreas. Appreciate you joining today.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one. Thank you all for watching this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at Horizon Capital, and myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please comment down below and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.